Sabah al-Khair, good morning dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Robert Martin, Nasser Mashni and Yusuf Ahmed al-Rimawi.
Palestine Remembered is Australia's only English language radio program that is totally dedicated to Palestine. We'd like to welcome those listening on 855 and those that will join us on podcast at 3cr.org.au.
Thanks for joining us. Stay with us and enjoy the episode.
Bringing you the news and views and the untold side of the Palestinian struggle for freedom from a Palestinian perspective. Good morning, listeners. Thanks for joining Palestine Remembered. It's a beautiful weekend. We're joined by Joharah from Palestine. She's a writer and activist joining us again for the first time in 2022. Good morning, good evening, Joharah. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you? Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, and thanks again for joining us. Your show last year was really fantastic, and looking forward to speaking to you because we've got a few great things that have come up in the past week, and a few sad things as well. But let's start first with the Amnesty International report, which is fantastic. Finally, white people have said that apartheid is happening, and the world might be listening a little bit. We've said so for 50+ years, but the world is listening a little bit. What's the reaction been like there?
Well, look, I think that, like you just said, I think first of all, the Palestinians especially are saying, hello, we've been saying this for years, but it just, for some reason, it gives more credence to the argument when, like you said, the white man says it. But again, this is not the first time someone's called Israel an apartheid state. Human Rights Watch has said it, and B'Tselem has said it. The difference now is that Amnesty has broadened it, and they're speaking about Palestine, historic Palestine, inside the 48 territories, and that's what is so, for us, that's also very groundbreaking, because now Israel is forced to look at it, they're basically saying, Israelis, Israel is not just implementing these racist and discriminatory laws against Palestinians in the occupied territories, but even against their own citizens. And I think that's why it's been it's very welcome among Palestinians. Even some Israelis are having, I use the term loosely, left-wing Israelis are saying, well, yeah, there's a point to what they're saying. We as Palestinians, we look at this it's very positive for us, because I think it gives us grounds now in the international arenas to make an even more valid point, and basically give a little bit more weight to what we've been saying for so many years.
Another thing that the Amnesty report spoke about wasn't just the 48ers and
the refugees,
but also the refugees. So now I'm also included for the first time. We've always known, the UN, 194, UN resolution 194 gets reaffirmed every year, which says that I have an inalienable right to return, a birthright, something I can't sign away from my children, an inalienable right to return, and the right to compensation and my home back. We've got our keys. We want to go home. I mean, we are going home. Really added another dimension.
Absolutely. I mean, the refugee issue, as you know, more than anyone else, is something that Israel has, avoids like the plague, basically, because for Israel to recognize even the fact that that they displaced so many Palestinians would be recognition of that crime. And so for an organization such as Amnesty International to come out and say that, I think it's a big deal. I really do think it's a big deal. I mean, like you said, 194 has said it for years. There's a resolution, but no one's ever actually recognized it in that way. So again, I think the road is still very long. I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I think that now we have even more grounds for our struggle. I think that things are changing. The shift is slow, but it's changing.
Absolutely. And what it creates, what Amnesty does, what Human Rights Watch, B'Tselem, Yesh Din, on top of all the work that Palestinians did to get to this point, is it creates an umbrella of cover. So in, if you will, polite society in the West, there is a growing space now to speak to the crimes, and there's language now that has been okayed by these human rights organizations. When the State Department uses B'Tselem's reports previously, but now all of a sudden, B'Tselem says apartheid, we don't accept that report. When the United States says, look what the Chinese are doing in the Uyghurs, according to Amnesty, when they impose sanctions on the generals in Myanmar because Amnesty said they're practicing apartheid against the Rohingya. We're okay with Amnesty, but all of a sudden, we say
Israel
apartheid, and no, everybody knows they're anti-Semites. They've got a long history of anti-Semitism. They just hate Jews. There's nothing really bad going on here. In fact, we've got a member of the Knesset who's an Arab. We think he's good. We've made him deputy Arab minister.
For me, the Americans are in a class of their own, and I'm not saying that in a good way. You have the Western world, which is bad enough in my opinion, but then you have the Americans, who it's always, what is the progressive except for Palestine? It's always the exception is Palestine. Also, I think when organizations with such influence and such clout like Amnesty International or Human Rights Watch or all of these, and they start to push this, they're going to force the Americans' hands one way or the other. I mean, whether the Americans like it or not, they're part of the international community. And there's but so much that they can push back against. So I think that at this point, when you have organizations like Amnesty International, like Human Rights Watch, saying, look, we have hard evidence, we are showing you 1, 2, and 3, and we don't make these arguments lightly, we always back them. It's going to be very hard for them to keep pushing back and, against the tide and trying to always just tout Israel's, line. It's a slow process, but you have people on the ground also who you can't keep ignoring. And even, and in the United States as well.
One of the failings of the Amnesty report is it talks about apartheid codified in every act of the government, institutions, everything. The Amnesty report, whilst adding refugees to apartheid, the report is still short of what we need, which is a struggle against colonization. We need a decolonization. There needs to be a decolonization of historic Palestine.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. We do want equal rights, but not at the expense of our national rights. That's the thing. So when I say that I'm a proponent of the one state solution, it's not just about civil rights, civil or equal rights. I think that all people, anyone in any plot of land should be able to enjoy the same rights, civil, whatever. But as Palestinians, we also have been denied our national rights and our identity for so long, and that needs to be recognized. In that sense, I'm a one-stater, to be honest. So everyone can live, but not at the expense of someone else's rights, and that includes national rights, and that's what is so missing in that kind of argument. Yes, we want equal rights, we want civil rights, but we also want our national rights. We want our identity to be recognized and respected just like anyone else's.
And the path to that is dismantling this concept of settler colonialism
yes.
References one person over another purely on the basis of their religion.
Exactly. And that's where it's a little bit different than, like apartheid South Africa. Yeah. And then when somebody will tell you, oh, well, you can't call Israel an apartheid state because it's not like South Africa. It's like, no two situations are exactly the same. We're talking about a system. Mm-hmm. Okay, and the system that's based on discrimination and racism and on the basis of your race or your nationality. Doesn't have to be exactly. Doesn't have to be a mirror, And in that sense, yes, because Palestine is very unique. The struggle or the conflict is very unique in that it's existential, really. Yeah. It's kind of like this whole thing of it's either us or them, and this is what it doesn't have to be. For a long time, the struggle is like, the Israelis, the Zionism wants us out. They want to exclude Palestinians in order to replace them. Now, what I'm trying to say is that, yes, it doesn't necessarily have to be like that, because if you have a one state that includes everyone and respects their political rights, then, and their national rights, then. But I don't see that happening. Don't mistake me. I don't see it happening because don't misunderstand me, because I don't think that Israel in its current shape, form, and ideology will ever accept that.
No.
But,
one of the things when people say that apartheid it's not like South Africa. You say, you're right, it's not like South Africa, and you should listen to Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela. It's worse.
In some senses, yeah. In some ways, it's much worse, but it's it's not identical. Because white South Africa didn't want to eradicate the Black South Africans; they just wanted to control them.
Yeah.
In our case, no, they want the country without the people.
Yep.
It's a different situation, but the system that has been imposed is very apartheid-like.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like you said, in some ways, it's worse.
Yeah. And we should say, in Zionist plans, they never wanted apartheid because apartheid is ruling over somebody else. Zionism is a settler colonialist mindset. Apartheid is their second choice. That's the second choice. The first choice is no Palestinians. All the land, no Palos.
Exactly. It's very, they want to completely eradicate. They want to, and at this point, I think Israel knows that that's not an option. But, they're not going to they're not going to exterminate us. However, part of the system in place, which is, again, this apartheid system, like you said, the goals are a little bit different. It's not just about controlling. So when they instate laws that make it very difficult for, land theft, home demolitions, not, barring just like straight up killing people, revoking residency rights, these all are for one goal and one goal only, which is to chase people off their land and to replace them with colonialist Israeli settlers. It's as simple as that, and for me, I see all of Israel's laws, all of Israel's measures, all of Israel's practices flowing into, just into one river towards one goal, and that is to get as much land with as little Palestinians on it, and to replace the Palestinians with the Israeli Zionists. It's as simple as that, and that's where it's different. Yes, the system of apartheid-like system is very much in place. The goals may be a little bit different.
And just during the week, the Interior Minister Ayelet Shaked, she said, banning Palestinian family unification. Its aim is to stop the right of return. It might have security reasons, inverted commas, but it's for demographic reasons.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And at least somebody like Ayelet Shaked is very, she's very clear about her goals. She doesn't sugarcoat anything. I mean, I was one of the hundreds of thousands of people who have had to deal with this reunification problem. They make it very difficult, very, very, very difficult. And the process is very cumbersome, how to obtain family reunification. And that in and of itself is extremely discriminatory and extremely racist. No Israeli would have to go through this. Like you said, you have a right to return to your land, which has been denied to you and to your descendants. Any Jew anywhere in the world has this right automatically. And for myself, my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, they're all Palestinian, and they lived in Jerusalem as well. But because our village is right outside of Jerusalem, with the way that in 1967, how it was divided, they were West Bankers, and I married someone who was from Jerusalem, and I didn't have the right to live in my own home for over a decade, and only was allowed to when they decided that they would give me a permit. And that's after proving you have to have like whole file of papers to prove that your center of life is in Jerusalem for them to give you 1 year of residency right, and not even residency rights, just a permit to live there. So yeah, I think they bank on the fact that people get tired of this and they just kind of like, push them out.
And the report explicitly mentioned the revocation of Jerusalem IDs.
Yeah, that's even another issue. That's not even like my issue. That would, that hundreds of thousands of people since 1967 have had their revocation, their Jerusalem IDs revoked. Yeah, and it's in the report. And this is so cruel because people who live in Jerusalem and only have permanent residency, once that's revoked, they have nothing. They're not citizens of any country. They're stateless. My husband would be the same way. He's not a US citizen. He's not Jordanian. He only has residency rights in Jerusalem. He has a permanent. So if they revoke that, and they easily can revoke that if, for example, he lives outside the country, if he lives in the West Bank, and they prove that, there's a whole list of things, then he would end up basically with nothing, stateless. stateless, no rights. So it's a really cruel policy that they implement in Jerusalem. And it's very clear. The thing is with Jerusalem now that there are actual visuals that you can actually see them pushing people out. They literally push people out of their homes. And then they have other ways, the very high taxes that they impose on people, the lack of building permits. So people either illegally build somewhere, and then so their houses get demolished. For example, in Wadi Juz now, okay, they want to build what they're calling this like Silicon Valley of Jerusalem. Yeah. And so they're going to demolish like hundreds of shops, the whole entire area of Wadi Juz. Where these people are supposed to go? What Israel hopes for is they're basically, the term, they're Judaizing Jerusalem and Israelizing it. They're changing they're shifting not just the demographics, they're shifting even the actual character of the city. And now it's clear even to the eye.
Salman Abu Sitta says they want as much geography with as little demography. But then the erasure of culture, of connection, as well, whether it's cemeteries or whether it's buildings or, turning mosques or churches into discos and really despicable, horrible acts of cultural erasure and connection. We're joined by Joharah Bakr from Palestine. Joharah, this past week we had the execution of some Palestinians in Nablus, in Area A, in PA controlled what should be Palestine or a Bantustan of Palestine. Can you speak to that and what's happening on the ground? What's the PA doing? Impotence, the ineptitude, the corruption of the PA. In the past couple of weeks, Bennett sent some money to the PA. Israel's announced that finally Palestinian telcos will be able to upgrade from 3G to 4G. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is 5G. Yeah. For our listeners, remember how hard it was to send a picture in a 3G and how easy it is now to watch a video on your phone. Palestinians are still almost a decade behind you via the apartheid system of Israel. The assassination happened in Nablus, Area A. How much more can the Palestinian people tolerate of this?
The question is not just how much they can tolerate from the occupation, it's how much they can tolerate also from the PA. To be honest, okay, like you said, all city centers are Area A, which is under full, Palestinian administrative and security control. So the question remains, how did two cars, with Israeli soldiers in military garb entered Nablus, wait for 10 minutes until these three Palestinians arrived in the car, and then basically shot they said there were like 90 bullets found around the car, and then checked to make sure that they were all dead before they left. So there are a lot of question marks here. Israel is known for its assassinations. We all know that. We know that they kill with impunity. We know that they don't fear. But why has it become so easy for them? That's the question that the Palestinians need to ask themselves. Israel is our occupier. We understand that. We understand that they're going to be vicious, they're going to be relentless. The question is why what we call, preventative security or whatever the security forces, who are they protecting? Not us, if this is the case. So there are a lot, there's a lot that we have. There's a lot of reckoning that we need to do. And this was horrible. Okay, these three men were basically just assassinated in cold blood in the center of Nablus by Israeli soldiers who just did that and left. Nothing. Now, where does that happen?
It's unbelievable. And, the correlation between the cooperation that must have occurred between the PA and the security services to allow these guys to drive in there, the correlation is with the coordination that allowed the same security forces that should have been protecting these Palestinians, that allowed, in the flip side, was the Israelis that allowed the security forces to go question Nizar Banat, and, question him till his death. And, the disaster that is Oslo continues to hurt us. And the next intifada needs to be against the PA, and Oslo.
Oh, absolutely. The problem with Fatah is that, I mean, ironically, okay, the men who were assassinated were from the military wing of Fatah. Okay, that's the problem. Fatah is so broad that, okay, politically they've become corrupt and they've become, the leadership, the Palestinian, I don't even want to say leadership, but the PA or whatever. But the military wing is still very military. So, you have this dichotomy that's just like completely, I don't know, it's very haywire. But I think that, for one, if I were a Fatah member, this should be my day of reckoning. They need to see what's going on, because there's no way that these three men would have been assassinated if there was no security coordination. And I'm not saying that Israel doesn't have its collaborators. Historically they always have. Okay, even before the PA. But the ease with which they entered, the ease with which it was very visible. And for the fact that they shot this car up and then actually got out to make sure, opened the car doors to make sure that they were dead. And where the PA service, where were they? How could this happen in broad daylight to our people right there? So I think that Fatah has a lot of reckoning to do. I really do. Because these were their men. These were their men too. And Oslo is far, far expired. I mean, for me, I think it was dead. It was dead in the water, to be honest. But I don't think, not everyone believes, thinks like me. But at this point, even by its own terms, it's expired. Even by its own timeline, it's expired. And it has become so, I mean, the PA has become so corrupt that, it's so counter to anything that to Palestinian aspirations, that it's become so harmful to us instead.
It's a barrier.
Very harmful. Very much so, very much so. Now, instead of the Palestinian struggle having one level of oppression, there's two. And that's no good. And even even the PLO needs to be restructured. The people need to be changed. I mean, only yesterday they finished, I think, the closing statement of Palestine, the Central Council, which is the level right below the PNC. And there was a big thing about this because, again, it wasn't convened on consensus. The PFLP boycotted. Hamas and Islamic Jihad were not part of it. The PPP pulled out. So it was basically, again, it was just kind of like this, rally for Fatah and for Abu Mazen. And it's corrupt. It's just corrupt. The whole leadership from the top down is corrupt. And so for the Palestinians, the people, I don't know how we're going to overcome, the occupation when we have this level of oppression from within our own people that are almost literally killing us.
While we move on from that very quickly, we should say, one of the things that Israel does is democracy wash. We're a democracy. Well, no democracy sends their soldiers in a taxi into another theoretical country, Area A, supposed to be in the Oslo process some time ago, to extrajudicially kill 3 men, to shoot so many bullets. I mean, it's like a 1920s gangster movie, the up the car, to the point where the 3 men, God rest their souls, were unrecognizable to their family because they all got shot in the head so many times. Let's be clear, this is not the actions of a democracy, not the actions of a normal country, not the actions of a country that makes some mistakes. These are the actions of a criminal state. And as with any occupation, whether it's back to World War II, the Vichy governments in France and, conspirators, or whatever you want to call them in Italy and Spain, etc., there's always been people that have profited from the misery of their own people. In America, they call them Uncle Toms. Sadly, the history of our revolutionary movement that was so connected to so many revolution movements in the third world in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s is not a shadow of that inspirational leadership. And we need a reconstitution of the PA and the PLO. Well, the PA needs to die, and the PLO needs to be reconstituted, and a representative voice to the Palestinians all over the world, not just those in 67, but 48, 67, Jerusalem, the collar countries, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, the refugees all over the world get a voice. And then we would have a truly representative government, and that government will stop talking about this bullshit two states. We want our national rights in a decolonized historic Palestine to live as equals.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I mean, I think that that's the only way forward, because like you said, there's nothing left of where we started from. You know, like you said, Fatah was the first liberation movement. Where did they go? What happened? These three men who were killed, that's what's left of the Honorable Fatah movement. You know, the military wing and the people will still say that we need to fight the occupation on the ground. You know, the corruption has become so rife, and the PA, and even, it's not even just the PA, like you said, it's the whole leadership. They've become so entrenched in their own interests, and they pay lip service to the cause, but really on the truth is that a lot of them have sold it out for fancy cars.
Joharah, thanks so much for joining us again. It's so great to talk to.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.
All right, you take care. Thanks a lot.
That was the fantastic Joharah Bakr from Palestine speaking to us. I'm sure you remember her show from last year. Just go to the podcast page on 3CR and you'll be able to scroll through and find her interview from last year. It was fantastic. Joharah Bakr, she is a superstar Palestinian woman and somebody that we're also very proud of. Now, listeners, thanks so much for listening to Palestine Remembered on 3CR. You know, I know that 3CR relies on the support of our listeners to keep going. We're a not-for-profit community radio license holder, and we need a strong subscriber base to keep our financial independence. We're proudly community-owned and community-controlled. 3CR is independent and it provides voices for community like Palestine, like so many other of the shows on 3CR. We're free from commercial influence and government bias. This radio show is your radio show. This radio station is your radio station. We need your help to stay online. In February, we have what we call Subscriber Month. We need your support. We need you to subscribe. So go online to 3cr.org.au/subscribe, 3cr.org.au/subscribe. Click on there, subscribe to 3CR. You can call in and subscribe. So get a pen and paper ready. The phone number will be in the podcast, as will the link to where you can subscribe. But you can call in on 9419-8377, 9419-8377, press 1, and you'll be able to subscribe over the phone. Make sure you tell whomever you speak to that you're a great supporter of Palestine Remembered and a great supporter of 3CR. This is a one-of-a-kind radio show. There's 400 volunteers and incredible array of shows and programming content. We've got special, incredible broadcasts from Invasion Day and so many other diverse communities. There's 120 weekly shows. 3CR is so important for so many people, so many voices. Thanks for listening to Palestine Remembered, but we're only one piece of the 3CR family. So again, we need you to subscribe. We need you to subscribe. So 3cr.org.au/subscribe or call in 9419-8377, 9419-8377. Press 1, speak to one of the team in the office there and make sure you tell them that you're a big fan and a listener of Palestine Remembered. Thanks for listening. And remember, there's never been a better time for a free Palestine.
على عهدي على ديني على أرض تلاقيني أنا لأهلي أنا فديهم أنا دمي فلسطيني 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 أنا دمي فلسطيني